This is Beering Ain't Easy. Do you spend all week thinking about what new beer you'll try next? Then yeah, this podcast is for you. Come join us while we try new beers, share our ratings, debate craft beer culture, and in the process, throw a few jabs at ourselves. So crack one if you got one, and turn it up.
Welcome to Beer and Ain't Easy with Adam and Drew, episode 9.
The episode after 8.
Perfect. Way to hook the listeners right away.
Boom.
That is my favorite part of doing the podcast is after I do the intro and I have that dead space for you to say something. I'm always wondering, what the hell is he going to come up with this time?
See, Adam's got the easy job. He gets to do the intro and has like set things to say, and I have to come up with something. And I don't prep at all, and you can tell.
My favorite is episode 3 when he goes, episode trace.
Yeah, just showing my bilingual abilities. So let's talk about the previous episode, the Oktoberfest battle.
The battle of a lifetime. So I listened to it, and there are 2 takeaways that I want to cover today. Number 1, we are describing Oktoberfest beers, and one of your descriptions of the beers is it didn't have that Oktoberfest flavor.
It's kind of a Bush League description.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good way to describe it.
But before you go to your whatever number 2 thing you want to talk about, like we got some feedback on our beer descriptors, and we come to realize that we may not be the most descriptive guys in the world. And I actually checked the tapes after this to see if this was true. And I found when Adam was describing his favorite pale ale in the world, which was Maine Beer Peeper, he described it as having a really good pale ale flavor.
Well, I think the fact that you do all the sound editing and you've listened to that episode probably 15 times, and it took one of our listeners to give us this feedback and then you to go back and listen again to realize that was how I described it. Shows your competence in this subject matter.
Yeah, in episode 1, we made it clear that we're not experts. Mission accomplished. And we also said we don't do a lot of prep time, which it shows. But I will say thank you for the feedback on that. Keep it coming. Adam and we'll spend 1 or 2 minutes of prep time on our vocabulary for beers.
We're not going to commit to spending a lot of time.
Yeah, we don't want to bore you, but we may try to upgrade from using the beer's name in the descriptor.
So basically, we're committing to doing more than nothing, but that's about the extent of the commitment right now. Okay. Item number 2, the takeaway from the episode. The Untapped roast. Drew called me a cyber bully. And
true statement.
Since he called me a cyber bully, I was looking on Untapped last weekend, or in between this podcast and the last time we recorded. And I saw him drinking this fruit beer. And in the episode, I said, I'm not going to let him call me a cyber bully impact my behavior. But unfortunately, I did. So I would have said, nice beer, buddy, or some smart-ass remark to that effect. But because he called me out on being a bully, I didn't do that. So I thought instead of being a cyber bully, I would be an in-person bully and make fun of you for that beer.
I'm just glad to see you remorseful, and there is a soul in there somewhere.
deep down.
Deep down. Oh man. So I got to get something off my chest. Like before we get into the topic of our episode, there's been 2 things this summer /fall that have driven me to drinking more beer. One of them is this podcast because, I mean, by the nature, I'm like looking to buy a whole lot more beer. But the second thing is telelearning, the most bullshit thing I've ever had to do.
That shit is intense. Don't be fooled by it.
Yeah, so for those of you that don't have kids, school-age kids, be very lucky. But for the rest of us that have a varying level of certain days where your kid has to do their entire schoolwork in front of a computer in your house, it sucks balls.
Drew's over here saying it sucks balls, but he really has no idea what it's really like. He has a second grader, and his youngest is not in school yet. And she's at daycare, right? So she's not even home while you're living the good life, as I would call it. Over at our household, we have a second grader, a kindergartner, and an 18-month-old terror who destroys the house. And so you say, how on earth can you do virtual learning with a kindergartner? That is exactly how you do it. I saw someone talking about it online. I saw like a meme, and it's like, kindergartners doing virtual learning. They can't read, they can't follow directions, and they don't know how to use a computer. What could go wrong? And it's like, oh yeah, that's really a perfect description. So like my second grader, like she's 100% on her own. Like
I'm glad she is.
She's fully independent.
My second grader is definitely hit or miss on this. They have these whole sections of time every afternoon where my daughter has to figure out, okay, I need to do 30 minutes of this program, 30 minutes of this, and 15 minutes of this. And so she comes to me like in tears while I'm on like an important meeting for work in the office over here. And I'm like, what do you need? And I'm like, okay, guys, hold up for a second. I'm going to go check on her. And she's like, I don't know if I've used up all my time yet. I'm like, just tell Alexa to set a fucking timer for 30 minutes. Like, it's not that hard.
Like, God damn
Was this worth me breaking out of my meeting for her?
So one of my favorite situation, well, my least favorite situation, but a funny thing to talk about. So my wife uses our laptop for her work, and then my daughter's using one of our iPads, and so we had to get another computer for my son because they're doing it at the same time. So we went and we got a laptop. It wasn't like a high-end laptop, but it wasn't like complete dumpster laptop. So now he's been doing it for like a week and a half, and my 18-month-old son, like his favorite afternoon leisure activity is just to grab water bottles and dump them anywhere. So it's like, so he gets this water bottle and he just dumps it on the computer. And I was at work that day, and my wife calls me and she's like, Carver dumped water on the laptop and it won't turn on. And I'm like, that son of a bitch.
Oh my God. $1,000 down the drain.
Fortunately, we dried it off, and it is turning on. It's a little deformed, and it looks like it's been in service for 5 years. Like it just, if I took a picture of it and showed y'all what it looked like, you'd be like, there is no way that laptop is less than 2 weeks old.
I feel like the two things that destroy the things you love the most are kids and pets. Like you might as well just say goodbye to all the things that are worth anything in your house.
All right. So Drew, I'm sick of listening to you talk without a beer.
Okay. But you were the one just jabbering on, by the way. but do tell, what are we talking about today?
We have a very special beer today. We have Pliny for President 2020 Double Dry Hopped IPA by Russian River Brewing Company.
Dude, I cannot tell you how excited I am about this beer.
This beer has been on my wish list. And I just stumbled across it. But before we get into that story, I am cracking it.
Do it.
I'll do the honors since
this is the first time Adam's ever cracked a beer. Don't screw it up.
Ooh, got a little on the mic, but that's all right.
So for those of you that have been with us for more than one podcast episode, know that we're always...
Bless your heart.
Yeah, bless your heart. You know that we are always talking about the chase.
The chase.
And when we talk about the chase, we're talking about finding the best beer in America.
And if you remember in the beer politics episode, Drew made the pitch for a third presidential candidate, and that was Pliny for president.
Yeah, these beers from Russian River are often in the top 10 in the country, rated every year, year after year, highly sought after. They don't distribute these outside of the state of California unless you have an inside source, which Adam will tell us about.
I'll tell you, I got my connections.
Yeah, Mr. Procurement over here delivered in a big way. You know, we have to give each other credit when credit is due, and I'll give Adam credit for this. The beer tonight was so fancy that I had to bring out my fancy IPA glasses.
Oh, yeah.
So I've been obsessed with these glasses that I got for my birthday, and thanks to Ryan, my brother-in-law, for hooking me up on them. But I swear these glasses make every IPA smell freaking better.
They're really not that fancy, for the record.
Dude, I'm obsessed with them. I don't care what you say.
I'd be lying if I said I didn't recently acquire some.
Adam took like 2 sips out of my glasses and he was hooked.
I just couldn't let you one-up me. So It really wasn't about the impact on the taste or smell of the beer. It was I just had to have it too.
I also like the fact that I can hold it like a chalice. I'm like Little John, like, yeah.
Your little baby hands can't fit around a normal glass.
For those that want these, it's a badass glass. They're the Spiegelau IPA glasses.
So you know when we bust out the fancy glasses, there's some brewery hype.
One of the things about this brewery, which we've kind of touched on in previous episodes, is that Russian River is a ultra hyped brewery. When people talk about best breweries, they're bringing that hype. And so, you know, one of the things you're always on me about is the hype train. So what do you have to say about Russian River in this case?
Well, they do have a lot of hype. There is a little bit difference of their hype and some of the other hypes, because their hype isn't new. Like, they've been hyped for, 5-10 years, whatever, probably longer than that. But when I talk brewery hype, usually I'm talking like this brewery's made some really highly rated beers the last 6 months. But brewery hype is brewery hype. And Drew is a victim of brewery hype.
Guilty as charged.
Very, very guilty. He's always rating beers higher than they deserve because he buys into the brewery hype.
It's hype for a reason. You know, lots of people love it.
Some of the best advice I've ever given Drew is rate the beer, not the brewery.
And some of the advice I've told Adam is that don't automatically dock 0.5 points on Untapped for a beer that everyone loves.
Well, just because other people have hyped it doesn't mean I'm starting with a 5.0 rating. They're going to have to earn their rating.
So on this one, I mean, there's no doubt about it. This is an ultra hyped beer. So this will be the real test of brewery hype and who succumbs more to the hype.
This is probably the most hyped beer I've ever had.
Definitely on this podcast, for sure.
For sure, on this podcast.
So I'm still dying to know like how you got this beer, because I'm still in disbelief. When you showed me the pictures, I thought you had photoshopped it just to fuck with me.
I wanted to get you all hyped up and say it didn't happen. So I'm sitting there minding my own business, just, messing around on my phone. And I see someone in the Houston Craft Beer Society. Shout out to Chris. He's our buddy who came through for us. He posts this picture of a case of Pliny for president and says, "Hey y'all, I got some extra beers. Let me know if you're interested." And so I replied right away and said, "Hey man, I'm interested. I've seen him pretty active in that group, and so I figured he had a bunch of friends, and it'd be hard for me to get my hands on it because we didn't really know each other until this exchange, as I'll call it.
This epic exchange. This chase.
So he responds and says, "Yeah, I got you, man." And so the next day, we're arranging a meetup. I to be honest, it felt a little bit like a drug deal.
Yeah.
Like,
you got the hops, bro?
Yeah, he had the hops. I had the cash. It was a perfect match.
Yeah. Do a little like slip the cash, little high five.
So he happened to be going to a brewery pretty close to my house. And so it doesn't take a lot to give me an excuse to go to a brewery.
That's where the magic happened.
And that is where the magic happened, my friends. We're there, having a beer or two while we're waiting for the delivery. And I didn't know him. And so I just had I just saw a picture of him on Facebook. And so I actually went up to another guy that looked like him.
Classic.
I was like, "Hey man, are you Chris?" And I didn't know what he thought. A lot of people.
He thought you were on Grindr.
Yeah. After the fact, I'm like, what is he thinking? He's like, how often do you go up to someone not knowing what they look like and be like, "Hey man, are you Chris?"
You should have heard Adam when he got these beers. I've never heard, he was like a little schoolgirl giggling about this. But I can't make fun of Adam.
Don't act like you weren't fucking excited.
Okay, so this is how excited I was. Let me tell you my Pliny the Elder story. In one of our previous episodes, I talked about a bachelor party that I went to in San Diego. And on that bachelor party, we had 16 guys there. It was a bunch of dudes. And we started out on this brewery tour. And as we kept going by the hour, people kept dropping off until at the very end of the hour, there were only 4 of us left. And we were led by our buddy Wes. And he's like, "Dude, I know this bar is going to have Pliny the Elder." And so he calls them up and he's like, "Hey, you guys got a keg of Pliny the Elder?" And they're like, "Not yet, but it's the next keg to go on." He's like, "We're going to Hamilton's." And so we followed his ass there and we got up to the bar and we're like, "Dude, is Pliny the Elder on?" He's like, "Oh, not yet, but it's the next one." And I started thinking about this in hindsight and I'm like, if I'm a bar owner, I'm going to tell everybody that Pliny the Elder is the next keg on just to get some fucking people to come to my bar.
Oh yeah. Classic strategy.
So I don't know if that beer was even there, but
we should call them up right now.
Put them on the spot.
See what they say.
Yeah. And so what Wes did, which was a logical move, but we weren't in a logical state. So he went up and was like, "What's the beer that's closest to being floated? What's the keg ready to go?" And they pointed to a beer. I couldn't tell you what that beer was. And Wes was like, "I'll take 6 of them." So we had 4 of us, and he orders 6 pints of this beer. Still didn't float the keg, but he's like, "Oh, it will definitely float by the time we leave." But we were already at the end of our tour, and we were looking at those beers like, "There's no fucking way I can do another 6 beers." And so not only did we not get Pliny, but we left probably the most beer I've ever left in a bar in my life by the time we caught that cab. And so ever since then, it's been on my untapped wish list for Pliny the Elder.
The chase goes on.
Oh, it will never stop. Well, just hearing how you got that beer, it just I've always felt like there's these geographic boundaries of beer. It's like, oh no, Pliny is only distributed in California, or oh no, Maine Beer Company doesn't ship their beer out of Maine, and you're like, oh well, I guess we're fucked. But that just tells us there's an avenue to get creative and chase after those sought out beers. So I think the chase has just accelerated.
It has. And I'll be honest, I asked my buddy Chris how he got it, and it was not that elaborate.
It wasn't even a Mexican cartel or anything like that?
Well, it's nothing I can air on the podcast legally. But
Crossing state lines.
I'll just leave it here that it's not that complicated.
Can't wait to try it out more. So I think we're about at that point.
I think Everyone is getting sick of listening to our bullshit.
Let's bring on those ratings.
All right, so Drew, today we've had the privilege of drinking Pliny the Elder, Pliny for President, double dry hopped version by Russian River Brewing Company. So what are you thinking about this beer?
Dude, this is a fucking badass beer.
It really is.
I am a huge fan, and the thing that stuck out to me the most is when I took a big whiff of this beer, when it was a little bit colder, I felt like I got a little bit of floral, a little bit of fruity, herbal smell to it. And as it's gotten warmer, it's completely transformed, and it's got that smell that's all pine resin, resinous, dank West Coast IPA.
Yeah, I definitely agree with pretty much everything you said there. The one thing that kind of stood out to me on the smell is right when I poured the beer, I felt like I could almost taste the beer. Sometimes I get that with IPAs, but this one kind of stood out. And so...
Is that just because of my awesome glasses?
I keep dreaming. So in terms of appearance, I'd say it's on the lighter side of the IPA scale. It has a pretty yellowish tint to the appearance. What are you thinking on the taste?
So I think it's got a really solid IPA flavor.
Oh, good God.
I could not resist it.
I thought we were over this.
You know what? I fall back on things that are comfortable. No, from a flavors, I mean, this is the quintessential West Coast IPA. It
really is.
And I think like a term that people have used when talking about beers is balanced. And what I love about this beer is that it's dank, but it's not too dank. It's floral, but not too floral. It's a little bit boozy, but it's just like a perfect balance. You drink it and you're like, wow, this is a really well-made beer.
I agree. Extremely balanced. Coming in at 8%. It's not as boozy as I would expect it to be, and I think that's a good thing. Good hop flavor. Good combination of pine and floral. Not even the slightest hint of citrus for me.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. So with all that, what is your rating? What is your...
I am not going to succumb to the hype.
Oh, really?
Because this beer earned its rating.
You had me going there.
I am going a 4.75.
You son of a bitch.
Just to put this into perspective, I have only rated one beer in my entire life a 4.75. And that is Candy Green by SpindleTap. That is the best hazy IPA I've ever had. And I freaking love hazy IPAs. This, I'm going to say, is the best double IPA I've had.
I wish I had been rated first because I have actually never rated a 4.75 beer. But today I'm going to rate a 4.75 beer. It's not a 5 because I got to leave that sliver.
Because there will never be.
The chase will never end. There's no 5.
Okay, so I'm no mathematician. But my takeaway was this is the best beer you've ever had. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, you witnessed it here first.
History in the making.
History in the making. And with that, we know you're going to stay tuned for future episodes.
And future chases.
Because we're determined to find a better beer if it's out there. See y'all next time.
This has been a Beering Ain't Easy production at the Sesh Co-working Podcast Studio in Houston, Texas. Follow us on Facebook or Instagram, and if you want to see what we're drinking, our Untapped handles are Beering Ain't Easy Adam and Beering Ain't Easy Drew.